Update 5.2 is out and it brings us 4 new weapons and refines. This time we have Nina, Joshua, Flying Nino, and Sword Reinhardt. Lots of year 2 units, and as a reminder, Flying Nino and Sword Reinhardt have both been moved to the new 4-star special rate category when summoning. As we progress through the year, maybe they'll show up randomly if you get lucky. We'll be talking about what each new refine does and discuss a couple build ideas and general playstyles for each unit. First up is Nina, who has the one brand new weapon for this batch. Nina got the Spy Song Bow, and this is a fight to my bow that actually mirrors his Now's bow for its base effect. Accelerate special trigger, and if foe's defense is 5 points higher than their res stat, deals 7 damage per hit. Basically, this is a slang bow plus shining bow combo. Now, for the special upgrade, Spy Song Bow is doing some funky things. If unit is within 3 spaces of 2 allies in a support partner pair, excluding Nina, grants attack and speed, defense and res plus 6 to unit during combat, and also if unit deals damage to foe during combat, restore 5 HP per hit. Good lord, so Spy Song Bow literally requires Nina to be spying on her teammates, and she'll get a very nice plus 6 to all stat boost, plus 5 HP healing on hit effect. Overall, kind of a wonky weapon, maybe a bit gimmicky, but it does have potential. Unfortunately, it has multiple activation conditions to be at full power. First off, the Shining Bow effect is completely dependent on the enemy, and if they have a balanced defense and res stat line, then Nina's not going to get that extra plus 7 damage. It's not insane to find units with a more defense heavy stat line, but for the most part, a lot of super tanks like to have a balance of defense and resistance because they can tank more damage equally. You can introduce res debuffs to forcefully get the Shining Bow apart to proc, but Nina won't be normally hitting resistance anyway. The other requirement is Nina being near 2 allies in a support pairing. First off, ally support only works in the player's hands, so this refine is useless on defense teams. Second, while 3 spaces, it's a pretty big range. Both ally partners need to be in that range, so if Nina tries to initiate on a distant enemy, she may be too far away. If we look at Nina's stats, she has kind of low HP with really low defense. The extra plus 6 defense may not save her unless you have a bunch of investment on her. Luckily, Nina has decent resistance and a fine attack and speed spread, plus 6 to both of those, and the potential plus 7 additional true damage should be greatly appreciated. For some build ideas, you could try to go the Now's route and add Flashing Blade. The tier 4 version adds plus 5 true damage on hit, so it can stack with Spy Song Bow's base effect for 12 damage on hit. The extra special charge also works nicely with Excalibur specials, and Nina can proc Iceberg in 2 hits just like her dad. If you want some extra damage, we have Attack and Speed Solo or Swiss Sparrow Sacred Seals, and no follow-up isn't bad if you want to bust some tanks, because generally those really high defense units also stop a follow-up attack. If you want to get extra dirty with specials, you can add Times Pulse, which would prime Glacies to be procced in 2 hits as well, at least for every new player phase. Next, along with the usual initiation skills like Swiss Sparrow or even a Bond skill, if you are staying near the team, then there is the potential for low speed and defense. Unfortunately, defense debuffs sort of hurt your chances at getting the Shining Bow effect to proc, so it would only be consistent against really lopsided defense and res stat lines. In regards to pure player phase builds, Desperation also takes a hit here because Spy Song Bow heals 5 HP on every hit. You can run it still, but you would need Fury 3 to at least cancel out some damage, and even then if you hit twice, that's not going to help you out. A bit unfortunate since any physical damage counterattack is going to hurt a lot. That brings us to our last set, which is a tankier build, plus 6 all stats with a heal on hit effect. Could work with close counter, but I would say Nina really needs the investment in merges and whatnot. She's not like Norn, unfortunately, and her low base HP also doesn't help. I would say something like low attack and speed would be helpful, and then a defensive sacred seal like the new Brazen Stand seal we're getting from the next Tempest Trials. If you want to just do a range tank build, then a Unity or Dual Stance A skill would be nice, and then of course Distant Defense as a seal. Honestly, this is a bit of a strange refine, and Nina's availability does not help her case. She is a 5-star only archer, and she missed the cutoff for the new 4-star special rate group. Additionally, Norn exists, and her base defensive bulk is just so much higher, while still having respectable resistance and offensive stats. While I like the creativity and thematics of Spy Song Bow, I don't think it's going to make Nina a standout unless you really invest in her. Next up we have Joshua, who is an infantry sword Tempest Trials unit. His weapon Audhulma actually didn't get a change to its base effects. It's still a 16-mite sword that accelerates specials and grants a flat plus 5 resistance, which is something we don't see much. For the special upgrade, if foe initiates combat or if foe HP equals 100% at the start of combat, grants attack and speed, defense and res plus 4 to unit during combat, and inflicts special cooldown charge -1 on foe per attack during combat. Basically, this refine grants plus 4 all stats with the guard ability, and it's always active on the enemy phase with player phase activation requiring a full health target. Honestly, this is a really simple weapon that caters to a lot of different playstyles. It continues Joshua's jack of all trades, master of none sort of niche as a sword unit, which is a weird thing to say. With 31 attack and 35 speed, Joshua will not be topping the insane damage output that you can get from today's swordmaster type units, but he does have a good amount of defense and res to work with. In total, Audhulma gives Joshua +9 resistance, and that is a standout trait for a sword unit. The decent base res with the extra +5 from Audhulma was the main reason why so many people gave him distant counter, since back then a lot of sword infantry units had terrible resistance stats. For the most part, by far the most popular build for Joshua is distant counter, and this refine only empowers those builds with extra stats and guard to protect against any cheesy specials. He can run it with close call skills, with Spurn being the best choice because it grants +5 damage on special procs. If you want to get the most from Spurn, you most definitely need +10 marriages and more, with probably a speed focused secret seal like one of these solo skills. Distant counter is a ton of fun for a journalist build and should be fine in any PvE content. If you go into arena with Spurn or close call, then you may need to watch out for the hyper offensive units out there. Now, instead of retaliating against ranged foes, you can just buckle down with something like Forge's defense and res 3. Again, Joshua's defense and res spread is really solid, and the extra +4 to both stats with guard should make for a nice and bulky swordsman. Instead of going hard on speed, this type of build may be better off with special spiral to recharge Iceberg, Glacies, or Aether, although a low would be pretty nice as well. You could double down with the Fortress Defense and Res Sacred Seal, which would be funny, but that's going to put a lot of pressure on specials to proc for damage. Last, let's just talk about some more options because Joshua really can be built in all kinds of ways. Wrath is fine for special retaliations, while low attack and speed would be decent for consistent debuffs and getting rid of enemy attack and speed buffs. Flashing Blade can work nicely with those accelerated specials, and no follow-up is becoming very valuable to just stop all those powerful follow-up weapons and skills. The new Mystic Boost Sacred Seal could be interesting for long PvE fights, and Ploys or Sabotage debuffs are available should you so desire. Distant defense, close defense, or defense and res bond are nice sacred seals because Joshua can tank both damage types just fine. Personally, I do feel like Joshua needs a bit more damage if you can't spam specials often, and this is where a dual threaten could be decent if you can get it. Now that he has guard, if Joshua is slugging it out with enemies and they survive, then a threaten skill can help him finish the job, and the tier 3 dual threatens are really strong when they do proc. One rounding enemies is preferred, but the skill can clutch out a tough battle. Too bad they are just very hard to get. Overall, Audhulma's Refine is decent but not game changer by any means. There are so many monster sword infantry units, and Joshua's main strength is having enough stats to be built in a lot of different ways while having faster specials and guard. I think it's a really good weapon for distant counter and handling PvE content, but I am a little concerned when it comes to duking it out with the other crazy monsters in today's game. Personally, I am going to build Joshua one way or another, and I do have a lot of fodder on the side I want to use. I've been thinking of trying Spurn out, and I have a Byleth so I can get distant counter plus Ruptured Sky. Special Spiral Perma Icebergs does sound pretty fun though, so we'll have to see. Next we have Nino, more specifically the Flying Green Mage Nino from Year 2. She wields Giga Excalibur, and this thing definitely got an upgrade to its base effect. It's a 14-byte tome that grants +3 speed, and now it just deals extra true damage equal to 20% of Nino's speed stat. Before, this used to be the speed comparison true damage skill that had a cap of +7 damage. Now there is no cap and no speed comparisons. Giga Excalibur only cares about Nino's own speed, and by default she already deals more than 7 damage with this ability. 38 base speed plus 3 from the weapon is 41 speed, and 20% of that is 8 damage. This is pretty much half of Regna Astra per attack, and unless Nino has some speed debuffs on her, this number only goes up. For the special upgrade, Nino grants +4 attack speed to allies within 2 spaces during combat, and if she's within 2 spaces of an ally, she also gets the same attack speed boost. Pretty simple effect, we saw this last month on Hineka's bow. Basically, this is a joint drive attack and joint drive speed skill, and it's a decent all-around ability for team support. This +4 speed gets Nino up to 45 speed, where she now hits for 9 extra damage per hit. As you can see, Giga Excalibur got a great refine. It actually just deals more damage without needing to compare stats, and Nino gets a little bit of attack and speed to help fight the ever-growing power creep. From her stats, Nino is pretty clearly still an offensive mage. She's not really going to want to tank any hits, and if she gets to free fire, Giga Excalibur can dump out a ton of damage downrange. It's a bit boring, but unless you want to raise Nino's defensive stats, she kinda needs desperation to avoid enemy counterattacks. Using Fury is the easiest solution to get there safer, and for PvE battles, this should be fairly easy to accomplish. With just Fury 3 and of course Brazen Tag and Speed, that's already 10 extra speed, which translates to 2 extra damage with Giga Excalibur. Nino is blazing fast, and it gets worse if she procs her Refine, plus she can use Speed and Res Rain as well. This skill is currently on the new pledge in Tharja, so now's probably the best time to try and get it. Now if you want some supportive skills, Nino can easily work well in a Flyer Emblem team. With gold flyers, she gives everyone plus 8 attack and speed, and she would make a deadly duo with Archer Hinaka and her refined from last month. Of course, you can go with the Hone flyers for field buffs, and Fortify or Ward flyers grants extra defense and res. For the non-flyer teams, Nino still buffs them up, and you can instead run joint drive attack or just joint drive speed to add another +4 to either stat, and Nino gets the same stat boost. For mobility, if you don't need desperation, Nino does come with aerobatics, which makes her a scary flying range threat. She can also use a variety of flying mobility sacred seals. All in all, Flying Nino is still going to do these same things as before, initiate with a ton of attack and speed from the skies, and try not to get hit back. Last up we have Mr. Reinhardt, but this time with his sword. They are so afraid to give Dire Thunder or Fine, they just skip straight to Reinhardt and Owen's ults. Sword Reinhardt is a pretty fun sword cavalier because his Meisterschwert is an 11 might dual phase brave weapon. Reinhardt always attacks twice, and he has the typical low speed, good attack stat line. Important to note that, like Joshua, Reinhardt's defensive res stats actually aren't bad at all. He will get doubled a lot, but he can take a hit no problem. Meisterschwert Refine does account for this because at the start of combat, if the foe is more than 50% HP, Reinhardt gets +5 attack, inflicts -5 attack on the foe, and if he initiates combat, he also prevents a follow-up attack. Not really a surprising ability, seeing that dual phase brave weapons just want more attack, and Reinhardt gets just that. With +5 attack, he basically has a 16 might sword now, but the -5 attack debuff also makes him a little tankier. Additionally, if Reinhardt doesn't get the kill when initiating, he blocks a follow-up attack which can save him if the enemy doesn't have a quicker pulse type skill. This is a very nice refine that pretty much works for both player and enemy phase builds just fine. You can't really screw up a dual phase brave weapon if you just add more damage. It's been a long time since Sword Heart's release, and Cavaliers have gotten 2 really strong skills to utilize, and both are exceptionally good for a dual phase brave sword. First, solo skills are amazing for their big stat boost on both phases, and Cavaliers can easily activate them with their 3 movement. Second, low B skills inflict a constant in-combat debuff and nullify enemy field buffs. For Sword Reinhardt, all of these effects just complement Meisterschwert so well. For example, with double attack and defense solo skills, Reinhardt gets at least +12 attack on both phases. Low attack and defense inflicts -3 defense, which translates to 6 extra damage from his 2 hits, and the enemy has no defense field buffs to hide behind. While more damage equals more KOs, Reinhardt also gets a lot of defensive stats. He could get +12 defense, the -3 attack debuff, no attack field buffs, and he has that -5 attack debuff from his refine. Even if he gets hit twice, that's a lot of damage reduced, and you can always swap to an attack and res solo skill for more coverage. Very simple build, the only downside is if Reinhardt has to fight near his teammates. Next we have another strong dual phase brave weapon build, the distant counter plus vantage plus brazen attack set. With +5 attack from the refined, that just means more KO potential, so anything remotely squishy will get vantage cheesed. The added impact effect with a -5 attack debuff also helps Reinhardt survive a tough initiation so he can land in vantage range safer. While generally a build for enemy phase sweeping, this is still a powerful brave sword, so Reinhardt can still get those player phase kills as well. Obvious weaknesses are hardy bearing and fire sweep effects, but this is a fun build, especially with some savage blow skills. One skill I want to mention is Heavy Blade, another valid option, and this refine actually caters towards activating it a lot more. Reinhardt gets +5 attack while reducing the enemy's attack by -5, so that creates a +10 attack difference for Heavy Blade. Pretty solid to get Heavy Blade activated on higher attack enemies, and you can use a low skill for even better results. With Heavy Blade, Reinhardt could maybe use Gale Force. It's not super ideal because he should just get the kill in his first 2 hits, which isn't going to charge a 5 cooldown Gale Force. However, if the enemy survives and hits back, that will charge Gale Force, bearing guard effects, and with the follow prevention, that could keep Reinhardt alive, which then gets Gale Force going. This could be useful for one-off initiations in like Aether Raids or something like Resonance Battles where those enemies have really high HP stats. Just something to keep in mind. Now, to fill in Reinhardt's other skills, you can use attack or defense smoke, both fine options. Savage Blow works too, but if there is healing around, then a debuff would be better. A Rouse attack buff would be nice for the solo build, but not necessary. Double Death Blow is just fine, since again, the refine just adds more damage, and that's one scary 3 movement pony. For a fun consideration, you could whip out the old Brash Assault Sacred Seal and pair with Desperation. A lot of restrictions on Brash Assault, but you can get the Reinhardt to quality player phase. Now, not showcased here, but you could run an enemy phase build too. Reinhardt does get a nice -5 attack debuff, but if you run solo skills, those work on both phases, which complements Meisterschwert better. Honestly, really fun and easy to use refine. Sword Heart gets a lot of benefits thanks to lulls and solo skills, plus the old distant counter plus vantage set just gets stronger too. Maybe we'll finally see that Dire Thunder refine later this year. That's it for this batch of new weapons and refines. Pretty decent stuff, nothing too complicated, although Nina's bow is a little gimmicky. I'm interested to see what a fully invested Nina can do with that weapon, but I don't know how many players just have her lying around. As a reminder, Sword Reinhardt and Flying Nino are both in the new 4-star special rate category, so come tomorrow, you might see them pop up randomly. Do let me know your thoughts on these new weapons and refines. I will see you guys tomorrow for the banner and new Tempest trials.